I want you to start this deep dive with an image in your head. And I'm going to ask you to immediately delete the image you probably just conjured up. Forget the black cape. Forget the widow's peak. Forget the bats fluttering against a full moon.
And please definitely forget the bad Transylvanian accent.
Exactly. Instead, I want you to picture a dinner party. It's Easter Sunday, mid-1400s.
Okay.
The location is a princely court in a place called Wallachia. And the guests, they are the absolute elite, the wealthy, the powerful, the landed gentry.
The who's who of the medieval Balkans, basically.
Right. They're eating, they're drinking, probably feeling pretty good about their station in life, wearing their finest silks and furs. And then the host locks the doors.
And by the time those doors open again, the entire social order is effectively extinct.
Because the host is Vlad III, the man history remembers as Dracula.
Or, to use the name that really terrified an entire continent for decades, Vlad
the Impaler.
Vlad the Impaler.
So today, we are stripping away all the Bram Stoker fiction. We aren't talking about vampires or, sunlight allergies or looking in mirrors. We are doing a deep dive into the reality of a man who was, in so many ways, infinitely more terrifying and honestly more complex than any supernatural creature Hollywood could ever dream up.
That is absolutely the goal, to look at the human being behind the monster mask.
And to do that, we have a massive stack of sources to get through. This isn't just folklore. We've got Ottoman chronicles written by the people who actually fought him.
Right. We have German pamphlets that, they were basically the 15th century equivalent of tabloids.
Totally. And we even have some cutting-edge chemical analysis from just last year, 2023, that completely changes how we physically picture the man himself.
And the mission for this discussion really is to walk a very fine line. We need to figure out the central tension of his life.
Which is?
Was this guy a sadistic psychopath who tortured people for sport because he enjoyed the screams? Or was he a desperate pragmatist, a ruler of a tiny state sandwiched between superpowers who used terror as a calculated political tool?
It is the ultimate historical case study in do the ends justify the means, if the means involve 20,000 wooden stakes.
Yeah.
But before we get to the blood and the horror, we have to clear up the branding.
Yeah.
Because Dracula is such a loaded word for us now. It just screams monster.
It does.
But that wasn't the original vibe, was it?
Not at all. In fact, if you were walking around the courts of Europe or Wallachia in, say, the 1430s, Dracula didn't mean vampire. It was a status symbol.
A status symbol.
It was a flex.
Yeah.
And it all starts with his father, Vlad II.
Vlad the Father.
Right. Vlad the Father was a nobleman who, in 1331, was inducted into something called the Order of the Dragon. And this is crucial context that always gets left out of the movie.
Okay, the Order of the Dragon, what was it? It wasn't just a social club, right?
Yeah. No, not a drinking buddy system. This was a militant, chivalric fraternity founded by Sigismund of Luxembourg, who was the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of Hungary.
So this is very high-level geopolitics we're talking about.
The highest level. The order's mandate was explicit: defend Christianity, and specifically to stop the Ottoman Empire from advancing into Europe.
Right, because the Ottomans were the rising superpower of the age.
Absolutely. So the Order of the Dragon was, you could say, the frontline defense.
It's like a medieval NATO special ops unit, but with, more capes and swords.
That's a pretty good way to put it. And the symbol of this order was a dragon. So because his father was a member, he took the name Dracul, which in the language of the time meant the dragon.
Okay, so Dracul is the dragon.
Correct. Now, in the Slavonic linguistic tradition they used in Wallachia, if you add an A or an E at the end of a name, it means son of.
Ah, so the grammar does all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. So Vlad III, our guy, becomes Dracula, literally, the son of the dragon.
Which is honestly a top-tier superhero name. Son of the Dragon. It sounds so noble, fierce, knightly.
It does. But linguistics is a funny thing, and language evolves. Over time, in the Romanian language, the word Draculog shifted its meaning.
How so?
It stopped meaning just dragon, and it started meaning the devil.
Wow.
So while he was born as the son of the dragon, history slowly morphed his name into son of the devil.
That feels like some incredibly heavy foreshadowing. It's almost literary how perfect that shift is.
It really is.
But we also have to address the other name. The one that makes you physically wince. The Impaler. Did people actually call him that to his face? Like, excuse me, Mr. the Impaler, your 2 o'clock is here.
Absolutely not. Unless they had a serious death wish, and even then I wouldn't recommend it. During his lifetime, he was just Vlad or Vlad Dracula.
So the nickname came later.
Much later. The moniker Vlad the Impaler, that comes from the Ottomans first. The writer Tursun Beg referred to him as Kazıklı Voivode, the Impaler Lord, around the year 1500.
So the Turks gave him the nickname.
Yes, because they were the ones on the receiving end of it most often. And then later, Romanian history writing adopted it, mostly to distinguish him from all the other Vlads in the history books. It's a way to keep the family tree straight.
It's a bit like being named after your favorite hobby. Just a very, very dark, very specific hobby.
A very specific hobby, yes.
But to understand why he chose that hobby, why he became a man defined by such brutality, we have to look at the map. I feel like with these medieval deep dives, geography is always destiny.
It is completely inescapable here. You cannot understand Vlad without understanding Wallachia.
Which is modern-day southern Romania, right?
Right. But you should think of it less as a country and more as a corridor, a buffer zone.
Okay.
To the north, you have the Kingdom of Hungary, a Catholic European power. To the south, across the Danube River, you have the Ottoman Empire.
And the Ottomans are this Islamic, rapidly expanding superpower that has its sights set on conquering, like Rome and Vienna.
Precisely. And Wallachia is the ham in the sandwich.
It's the kill zone.
It is the kill zone. It's the buffer state. If the Ottomans want to invade Europe, they have to march through Wallachia. If the Hungarians want to push back the Turks, they fight in Wallachia.
So being the Prince of Wallachia was arguably the most dangerous job in Christendom.
I think so. You were never safe. You had to play both sides constantly just to survive, always switching alliances.
And playing both sides. Well, it has consequences.
Yeah.
In 1442, Vlad's father hits a breaking point. He has to prove his loyalty to the Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II. And the price of that loyalty isn't gold or land. It's his children.
And this is the moment that breaks the boy and makes the monster. It was a practice. Well, you could call it hostage diplomacy.
Okay.
It was standard procedure for the Ottomans. To ensure a vassal state like Wallachia wouldn't attack them, the Sultan demanded collateral. And he took Vlad, who was about 11 or 12 at the time.
So young.
And his younger brother Radu, who was only about 6.
I want to pause on that for a second. 11 and 7, these are elementary school kids. They're taken from their home, handed over to the enemy, and taken to a fortress called Ivregez in Anatolia. This is not a study abroad program.
No, it is imprisonment with a constant hanging threat of execution. They knew, because they were told, that if their father made one wrong move back home, the Sultan would kill them.
Goes like that.
Probably execute them on the spot. They lived with that sword hanging over their necks every single day for years.
But here's where the story really splits, because you mentioned the two brothers reacted to this trauma in completely opposite ways.
This is the key insight. This is the Cain and Abel dynamic that drives the entire narrative forward.
So what happened?
Radu, the younger one, he adapted. He was described as being incredibly handsome. History knows him as Radu the Handsome, and he was charming, malleable. He eventually converted to Islam. He even befriended the Sultan's son, the future Mehmed the Conqueror.
So Radu integrates. He kind of becomes one of them.
He becomes fully integrated into the Ottoman court. He plays the game. He realizes, the Ottomans are the superior power, and he decides to join the winning team.
But Vlad?
Vlad survives by resisting. He was stubborn. He was likely abused because of that stubbornness. Physical punishment was very common. He watched his brother become friends with their captors, and he hated him for it.
He saw it as a betrayal.
He viewed Radu as weak, as a traitor. But, and this is the part that defines his entire military career, he didn't just sit in the dark and sulk. He studied.
What was he studying? He's a prisoner.
Everything. He learned fluent Turkish. He memorized their military command structure. He analyzed their psychology. He watched the Janissaries, the Sultan's elite troops train.
Wow.
He was locked in a cell, or at least under house arrest, basically radicalizing himself and taking detailed notes on exactly how to destroy the people holding the keys.
He's downloading the enemy's operating system. He's figuring out all the bugs in the code.
That's a perfect analogy.
Meanwhile, while he's doing all this, back home, the Game of Thrones situation is just getting completely out of hand.
It is a total bloodbath. In 1447, while the boys are still hostages, the Wallachian nobles, they're called the boyars, they stage a coup.
Oh, no.
They conspire with John Hunari, who's the regent of Hungary. They kill Vlad's father and his older brother, Mircea. What they did to him it's horrific.
This is the part that really turns my stomach.
The records say the boyars blinded Mircea with hot pokers and then buried him alive.
Buried alive. Just imagine the psychological impact of hearing that news while you're sitting in an Ottoman dungeon. Your father is dead, your older brother was tortured to death, and the people who did it are your own countrymen, the nobles who were sworn to protect your family.
That betrayal is the absolute bedrock of Vlad's worldview. He learns two things in captivity. One, the Ottomans are an existential threat that must be stopped at all costs. And two, you cannot trust your own aristocracy. The boyars are treacherous snakes. The only way to survive is to be more terrifying than the enemy and more ruthless than your own people.
Trust no one. Strike fear into everyone.
That's the formula.
So when he finally gets out, after being released by the Ottomans as, a puppet ruler, which obviously didn't work out for them, he eventually takes the throne for his second reign in 1456.
Yeah.
And this time, he is not interested in diplomacy. He goes straight for the jugular.
He does. And this brings us right back to that Easter feast we started with.
The red wedding moment.
Exactly. He invites all the boyars, the very nobles he suspects of killing his father and his brother, and he asks them a simple question over dinner.
What's the question?
How many princes have you survived?
That is a trap.
A total trap. Some of them bragged, oh, I've seen 10 princes rule. Some said 20. To them, this was a boast about their longevity, their power. To Vlad, it was a confession of treason. It proved they were disloyal, just churning through rulers whenever it suited them to keep the central government weak.
So the dinner party ends abruptly.
Very abruptly. He has the leaders executed, impaled on the spot. But for the younger, more able-bodied ones, he doesn't kill them immediately. He enslaves them.
What does he do with them?
He marches them up a mountain to a place called Ponari without stopping, and he forces them to build his fortress. His castle.
These are soft-handed aristocrats. They've never worked a day in their life.
Exactly. The chronicles say they worked until their fine clothes literally fell off their bodies and they died of exhaustion. He works the old aristocracy to death to build his new stronghold.
That is some heavy, heavy symbolism. He is physically replacing the old feudal system with a structure built on their bones.
It's brutal, but it's incredibly efficient. He then replaces them with a new meritocracy.
Right. He promotes peasants and lower-ranking soldiers who are loyal to him.
Yes. He builds a state machine that answers only to him. He creates a new nobility that owes everything to Vlad. But he doesn't stop with the nobles. He picks a fight with the economy, specifically with the Transylvanian Saxons.
And these are the German-speaking merchants who had settled in the region. Usually a ruler wants to keep the merchants happy. They bring in the tax revenue. Why go after the money?
Because it was a trade war, but with body counts. The Saxons were bypassing Wallachian customs duties. It was tax evasion, essentially. They were hurting local merchants.
Okay, so there's an economic reason.
There is. But worse, they were playing politics. They were actively funding Vlad's rivals. They were sheltering other claimants to the throne, people like his half-brother Vlad Kalugurul or another rival named Dan.
So they were funding a regime change against him.
Precisely. So Vlad decides to impose sanctions. But his version of sanctions involves sharp wooden poles. He raids their villages in Transylvania around the cities of Braov and Sibiu.
And this is where the legend of the Impaler really takes root and spreads to the west.
It is, because he didn't just kill the men who were fighting him, he impaled everyone, merchants, women, children. No one was spared.
We have to talk about the cauldron story here, because the sources get very specific about his creativity during these raids.
They do. The German pamphlets from the time, and remember, these are written by the Saxons he was attacking, claim all sorts of horrors. They claim he forced mothers to be impaled together with their babies. And then there's a story about a giant copper cauldron.
Okay, set the scene for us.
The claim is that he built this massive pot with holes cut in the lid. He would put people inside, stick their heads through the holes so they couldn't move, fill it with water, and then just boil them alive.
That is just unbelievably gruesome. Do we buy that? Is that historical fact or is that 1400s propaganda?
I think we have to be incredibly skeptical. These stories were written by his enemies, the people he was killing. They had a vested interest in portraying him as the literal Antichrist to get the rest of Europe to hate him and, maybe send an army to stop him.
Sure.
Did he boil people? Maybe. He was certainly capable of it, but the fact that these stories spread so widely tells you about the level of fear he inspired. He wanted people to believe he was capable of anything.
It's pure psychological warfare.
Yeah.
If your enemy thinks you're a demon who boils people alive, They might think twice about cheating on their taxes or funding your rival.
Exactly. Fear was his primary currency. It was his main tool of statecraft.
But all of this, the nobles, the merchants, the boiling cauldrons, this is all just the warm-up act, isn't it?
This is local politics.
The main event was always going to be the Ottoman Empire.
The inevitable collision. Vlad knew it was coming. He had already stopped paying the tribute, the jizya tax, to Sultan Mehmed II.
And let's just remind everyone who Mehmed II is. This isn't some local warlord.
Yeah.
This is the man who conquered Constantinople in 1453. He ended the 1,000-year-old Byzantine Empire.
Yeah.
He is the most powerful man in the entire geopolitical neighborhood. Defying him is basically suicide.
It was seen as madness. But Vlad provokes him, intentionally. There's a famous story recorded by the historian Antonio Bonfini about the turban incident.
Oh, this one is classic Vlad. It's so dark, but it's also weirdly witty.
It is. So Ottoman messengers come to Vlad's court to demand the tribute. They bow, but they refuse to take off their turbans in his presence. When Vlad asks why, they cite their religious custom and their law.
And Vlad, being a stickler for etiquette.
Vlad says, "Then I shall strengthen your custom." So he orders his guards to nail the turbans to the ambassadors' heads. 3 spikes each, driven right into the skull.
Now, you never have to take them off. It's a message.
It's a very clear message. It says, "I do not submit to anyone. Your customs do not apply here."
So Mehmed gets the message, and I assume the corpses of his envoys. He decides enough is enough. He sends a team to trap Vlad.
He does. He sends a commander named Hamza Bey and an envoy, Katabalinos, to ambush him. They tell Vlad they just want to negotiate. But remember,
Vlad knows the Ottoman playbook.
he grew up with these people. He anticipates the trap. He brings a bigger army, and he captures their entire ambush party. And he impales them all. He gives Hamza Bey the highest stake of all to honor his high rank.
It was a gruesome form of professional courtesy.
You could say that.
Then things escalate very, very fast. This isn't just a border skirmish anymore.
No. In the winter of 1461-62, Vlad crosses the frozen Danube River and goes on an absolute rampage in Ottoman territory. He devastates the region, and this is where we see his obsession with data. He writes a letter to Matthias Corvinus, the king of Hungary, and he tallies his kills. He was obsessed with the numbers.
He kept a scorecard.
He writes, and I'm quoting the number here, "I have killed 23,884 Turks and Bulgarians."
23,884. Not about 20,000. That specificity is chilling.
He even noted that this count did not include those he burned alive in their homes. And to prove his numbers, he sent sacks of noses and ears to the king of Hungary.
Sacks of noses and ears. Can you imagine being the courier for that particular package?
This forced Mehmed's hand. The Sultan gathers an enormous army. The sources vary, but they say upwards of 150,000 men.
Wow.
It was an invasion force second only to the one that took Constantinople a few years earlier. He is coming to wipe Wallachia off the map.
And Vlad has, what's his army size?
Maybe 30,000 men.
Okay.
And that's being generous, mostly peasants, mercenaries, and light cavalry. He is outnumbered at least 5 to 1.
So he can't stand and fight. If he meets them in an open field, it's game over.
Correct. It would be a slaughter. So he uses a scorched earth strategy. This is a strategy of total denial.
Okay.
As the massive Ottoman army marches north into Wallachia, Vlad retreats. But as he goes, he burns his own villages, he poisons the wells, he kills all the livestock.
He turns his own country into a wasteland to starve the enemy.
Exactly. Imagine marching through that. It's June, it's sweltering hot, you're wearing heavy armor, you're thirsty, but the water gives you dysentery. There is no food to forage.
And all the while, Vlad's men are probably harassing them.
Day and night, Vlad's light cavalry is hitting their flanks, firing arrows from the woods, and then just disappearing. The Ottoman soldiers are demoralized, they're terrified, and they're starving.
And then comes the night attack.
Yeah.
June 17th, 1462. This is the scene that should be in the blockbuster movie.
It is pure, unadulterated chaos. Vlad realizes he can't win a battle of attrition, so he tries to cut the head off the snake. In the middle of the night, he takes a small elite force, maybe a few thousand men, and charges directly into the center of the Ottoman camp.
That's a suicide mission.
It's an assassination mission. His one and only goal is to kill Sultan Mehmed in his tent. If the Sultan dies, the army likely disintegrates.
So what happens?
They tear through the camp, torching tents, slaughtering anyone in their path. The Ottomans are completely confused. They're fighting each other in the dark, thinking they're surrounded.
They miss the Sultan, right?
They do. They mistook the vizier's tents for the Sultan's. They missed Mehmed by just a few hundred yards. At dawn, Vlad had to retreat, but the message was sent.
The message being that he's crazy enough to run into an army of 150,000 men just to take a shot at the king.
Precisely.
But Mehmed keeps marching. He reaches the capital, Târgoviște. He's expecting a siege. He's expecting a final, glorious stand.
Instead, he finds the city gates wide open. The city is deserted, but as he rides through the valley leading up to the city walls, he sees it. The forest of the impaled.
This is the image that haunts history. Can you describe it for us?
It was a tableau of horror designed specifically for the Sultan. 20,000 rotting corpses on stakes. These were the Turkish and Bulgarian prisoners from the earlier raids.
20,000.
Men, women, and children, arranged in a vast, silent forest of death.
20,000 bodies. That is a stadium full of people displayed like some kind of macabre art installation.
The chroniclers say birds were nesting in their rib cages. The smell of death was overpowering. It reportedly stretched for miles.
How does the Sultan react? I mean, this is a man who has seen war. He conquered Constantinople.
Even he was shaken to his core. The Greek historian Chalcondyles writes that the Sultan was seized with amazement. Mehmed reportedly said, "It is not possible to take the country of a man who does such great deeds, who has such a diabolical understanding of how to govern."
He was
impressed. In a horrified way, yes. He recognized that Vlad was willing to go to lengths that no civilized ruler would even contemplate. It broke the Ottoman army's spirit.
How could it not?
They couldn't fight a ghost who left forests of dead bodies behind him. They were sickened. Mehmed turned his army around and went home.
So tactically, Vlad won. He repelled a superpower using psychological warfare.
Tactically, yes, a stunning victory. But strategically, he lost. Because Mehmed was smart. He realized he couldn't beat Vlad on the battlefield, so he beat him with politics.
What did he do?
He left behind something more dangerous than an army. He left behind Radu.
The handsome brother. The one who played the game.
Radu stayed behind with a contingent of Ottoman troops and a simple political message. He went to the Wallachian nobles, the ones Vlad hadn't killed yet, and he said, "Look, my brother is a maniac. He's gonna get us all killed. He's burning your fields. He's poisoning your water. I am friends with the Sultan. If you support me, the war ends. Trade resumes. No more stakes."
And the people were exhausted. They were starving because of the scorched-earth campaign.
Exactly. Vlad had saved the country, but he had destroyed it in the process. The nobles flipped. They chose the comfortable puppet over the dangerous hero. Vlad was forced to flee to the mountains.
And this is where the betrayal goes to another level entirely. He runs to his ally, the King of Hungary, Matthias Corvinus. He must be thinking, I just fought off the Turks for you. I held the line for Christendom. Help me retake my throne.
Instead, Corvinus arrests him, puts him in handcuffs.
Why? Why would he do that? Vlad is the best weapon he has against the Turks.
It was about money and politics. Corvinus had taken a whole lot of money from the Pope to lead a new crusade, but he didn't really want to fight the Ottomans anymore. It was too expensive, too dangerous.
So he needed an excuse.
He needed a reason to explain to the Pope and the Venetians why he wasn't fighting. He needed a scapegoat.
And he frames Vlad.
He produces forged letters. These letters allegedly showed Vlad writing to the Sultan, offering to switch sides and betray Hungary.
Wait, the guy who just impaled 20,000 Turks is now offering to join them? That makes zero sense.
It made no sense at all. And modern historians have analyzed the Latin in these letters and found it to be clumsy and submissive, completely unlike Vlad's known writing style. It was a clear forgery.
But it was enough.
It was enough for Corvinus. He used it as an excuse, and he threw Vlad in prison at Visegrad for 14 years.
14 years. So Vlad sits in a cell for a decade and a half. And while he's sitting there, something fascinating happens. The world starts talking about him. This brings us to what might be the first instance of viral fake news in history.
The timing is incredible. Johannes Gutenberg had just developed the movable type printing press in the 1450s. The entire media landscape of Europe was changing forever.
Right.
And what was one of the first bestsellers in Europe? The Bible, sure, but also pamphlets about the horror stories of Vlad Dracula.
The Saxons got their revenge in print.
They absolutely did. They printed these pamphlets in Nuremberg, in Bamberg, all over the German-speaking lands, and they were like horror comics. They featured these graphic, woodcut illustrations of Vlad dining among the steaks with severed heads on his table.
There's that famous detail about him dipping his bread in blood. That's from these, isn't it?
That specific detail appears in these pamphlets. He liked to dip his bread in the warm blood of his victims. Is it true? Probably not. It sounds like pure folklore. But it stuck.
Wow.
It became the defining image of him for the entire Western world. A mindless, sadistic butcher.
But there was another narrative, right? A competing story. If you go east, the story changes completely.
Yes, it does. The Russian and Slavic narratives, like a text called the Skazani, they paint a very different picture. They don't deny the cruelty. They absolutely admit he impaled people, but they call him Zlumidry.
Zlumidry. What does that mean?
It means evil-wise.
Evil-wise. That's a complex concept. It sounds like an oxymoron.
It implies that his cruelty had a purpose. It wasn't random sadism. It was a form of brutal justice. There is a famous legend in these Russian texts about a golden cup.
Tell me.
It says Vlad placed a solid gold cup at a public fountain in the town square of Târgoviște for anyone to drink from.
And nobody stole it.
It stayed there for his entire reign because the people were so utterly terrified of the consequences of stealing it. To the Russian chroniclers, this was proof of his greatness. He established absolute order. You could leave gold in the street and no one would touch it.
That's a powerful idea.
To a medieval peasant living in constant chaos and danger, that kind of security might have been worth the terror.
So you have these two competing versions. To the Germans, he's a psychopath. To many of the locals and the Russians, he's a harsh but effective sheriff.
Precisely. And history is written by the victors, but it's also written by the people who own the printing presses. The Saxons won the PR war because they had the technology.
So he rots in prison for 14 years. Does he ever get out?
He does. In 1476, the political winds shift again. A new, powerful Prince of Moldavia, Stephen the Great, argues that they need Vlad back on the wall to stop the Turks. The threat is rising again.
So Corvinus lets him go.
He releases him, but there's a condition. Vlad has to convert to Catholicism.
Giving up his Orthodox faith. That must have been a bitter pill for a man who saw himself as a crusader for his faith.
It was pure political necessity. He marries Corvinus's cousin to seal the deal, and he marches back into Wallachia for a third reign. But he's a man out of time. The world has moved on. He isn't the young dragon anymore.
And his final reign is very short.
Less than 2 months. He is killed in battle near a place called Snagov in late 1476. But even his death is a mystery.
What are the theories?
Some sources say he was assassinated by a Turk in disguise. Others, citing the Russian sources, say his own men mistook him for a Turk in the confusion of battle and killed him.
Killed by friendly fire. After everything.
Potentially. But the aftermath was very clear. His head was cut off, it was preserved in honey to stop the rot, and it was sent to Constantinople. Mehmed displayed it on a high state for all to see.
The impaler gets impaled post-mortem. Talk about ironic justice.
A grim end. And his body, we don't really know.
Wow.
Legend says he was buried at Snagov Monastery on an island, but archaeological excavations there in the 1930s, they found no body. Only horse bones.
He just vanished.
He simply vanished from the historical record.
Which, of course, leaves plenty of room for the vampire myths to creep in. Speaking of which, we have to address the Bram Stoker connection directly. Did Stoker know all of this? Was he reading these German pamphlets about the blood dipping?
Surprisingly, no. Stoker's research was, well, it was thin, to be polite.
Really?
He was sitting in the British Museum in the 1890s, and he found the name Dracula in a book by a British diplomat named William Wilkinson. The book just had a footnote, a single footnote that said Dracula meant devil in the Wallachian language.
So Stoker just thought, cool name, I'll take it.
Pretty much. His working title for the book was Count Wampire.
Count Wampire?
Can you imagine if he hadn't found that one footnote, you'd all be dressing up as Count Wampire for Halloween? Stoker didn't know about the Order of the Dragon or the Night Attack or the brother Radu. The historical connection is almost completely accidental.
That's incredible.
He took the name and he took the general location of Transylvania and he just made up the rest.
That is wild. The most famous monster in all of literature is based on a footnote. But before we wrap up, you sent me a link to a scientific study from August 2023 that absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, yes.
We have to talk about the tears.
This is just fascinating. This is where modern science meets medieval history. A team of scientists from the University of Catania analyzed 3 letters written by Vlad from 1457 and 1475.
Okay.
They used a technique called mass spectrometry to basically harvest peptides and proteins from the surface of the paper residue left by his skin and sweat 500 years ago.
So they extracted his biology from a piece of paper. That is basically CSI, Transylvania.
It is. And they found peptides that are associated with the retina and with tear fluid. But specifically, they found markers of a condition called hemolacria.
Yeah, that means...
It means he cried tears of blood.
No way. You're kidding me.
It's a real but very rare condition where blood mixes with tear fluid. It can be caused by infections, inflammation, or just extreme physical or emotional stress. So when Vlad wept, whether from rage or grief or the smoke of battle, it is chemically possible that red tears rolled down his face.
That is the most metal fact I think I have ever heard.
Yeah.
The man who inspired Dracula literally cried blood. You cannot write fiction that good.
It certainly adds a visceral, biological layer to the legend, doesn't it? And it makes you wonder if people saw that back then and thought he was genuinely supernatural.
How could you not?
Yeah.
So bringing it all together, we have a hostage child, a vengeful prince, a mass murderer by any modern standard, a defender of Christendom by medieval standards, and finally, a pop culture vampire icon. Is a messy, messy legacy.
It's deeply complex. If you look at him through the lens of the Geneva Convention, he is a war criminal who committed genocide. There is no getting around the 20,000 stakes. That is horror. Pure and simple.
Right.
But if you look at him through the lens of a tiny country trying to survive against a massive invading empire, well, then he's a tragic hero who did the unthinkable to preserve his nation's independence.
He was a monster, but maybe he was the monster Wallachia needed at that specific moment in history.
That is the central question, isn't it? And you have to remember, the version of him we all know, the sadistic madman, that's the version his enemies paid to print. We view him through the lens of Saxon propaganda.
That is a lot to process. The next time you see a plastic set of vampire teeth at a Halloween store, just remember the 15th century geopolitics behind them.
And maybe check if the person wearing them is crying blood.
The terrifying thought to end on. So, to you listening, think about the monsters in your history books. Ask yourself, who wrote the chapter? And what were they trying to sell you? Thanks for diving deep with us.
We'll see you on the next one.